Hello, and welcome to a new series of the Co Creative podcast. And everything is changed for this series, and it's been a while. As many of you know, last year was a time of great change for me, a time of bereavement, a time of grief, a time of recovery, and I changed platform over here to Substack for pretty much everything that I do outside of my work for the Alliance of Independent Authors, and the podcast too has shifted onto this platform. So I'm going to be talking today about the changes that has made to Go Creative planning as well as the podcast, and some of the things that are going to be happening here from the Go Creative perspective. So I'm using Substack to bring, as I said, everything together. I'll be doing a serialized version of my novel, and I'll be posting poetry, but I'll also be doing essays on Go Creative aspects and approaches, attitudes, ideas, all of that. And part of it will be this podcast and the planning, and once a month doing a planned creative live salon where we get together and do a series of exercises. I'll talk about that again today. I'm just going to talk about this particular part of the exercise, which is the podcast, and this will happen every month around new moon time, which is right now. Dark moon, it's also called. So I'm switching from doing a very outer directed, focused planning system largely for authors to something that's much softer and more me, I think. Certainly more the me that I am now, more in line with the poetry and fiction and other stories that I'll be releasing here on Substack. Softer, gentler, I think, because it will have a fortnightly rhythm. Each month, I'll be coming on here to do the podcast at new moon time, and we will set our intentions at that time of the month. And then we will meet again for the salon at full moon time 2 weeks later to renew or release, review what has been working intention-wise, what has been slipping or changing or shifting in the 2-week period, and then holding to what is working, letting go what isn't. And then as the moon wanes, moving back into the darkness again and resetting new intentions on the following new moon time. And this way of doing it, I think, will be, as I said, softer and a more forgiving approach than the weekly approach which we were using before. The moon is so incredibly powerful, and in our contemporary culture, so very overlooked. And I think that makes it a really good organizing principle, really, for a lot of what I talk about and think about now at this stage of life and at this stage of my work as a writer. The whole mystery of the creative process is exemplified by the moon. As I said, incredibly powerful, pulling the oceans, and of course, the tidal core of us also having a very obvious physiological effect on our bloodstream and blood systems, on our moods, on mental health. There is all sorts of interesting research into that, and it's wisdom that's as old as time and turns up in stories in every culture I grew up in an Irish rural culture, and awareness of the moon was much stronger in that culture than it is now in our contemporary city cultures. So, my intentions for the month to come, I'll talk about now in a few moments. And I'd like to invite you to pause the recording if you're not listening live. And if you are listening live, just take a moment to get a pen and paper, because if you've done creative planning with me before, you'll know that we always do a little free writing, and that I have a huge belief in writing for everybody, not just for writers. Writing as a tool, free writing in particular, writing fast, writing raw, writing exact, writing easy, writing freely to ourselves about what's going on for us is one of the most powerful things we can do, one of the most powerful gifts we can give ourselves. So, getting some pen and paper close by you so that when this recording finishes, you can immediately go into writing down your own creative intentions for the month to come. Mine, what I'm going to be focusing on here, is my Substack account, continuing to set it up. I have a whole lot of things that I want to do here, but one of the main things I want to do is more show and less tell. So it's a sort of well known, it's a cliche in the writing community about showing and not telling, as for fiction writers in particular, when you're telling a story, to actually sink the reader into the experience of what's going on rather than telling them what's going on. And I think to some degree, the way in which I have been working up to this part of my life has been very much in the telling mode. For the last 15 years, I'm working with the Alliance of Independent Authors. For many years prior to that, working in creative facilitation at university level, a teacher, in other words, and all the way alongside that, doing my writing. And now moving to shift more to being a writer and showing. And that's what I want to do in this Substack. Show my own creative process, invite you to show yours. And that's a shift that's going to take me a little bit of time, because I kind of automatically slip into teachery mode, and I don't want to do that here. I want to just honestly and openly talk about my own creative wishes and wants and desires, and also the challenges, because when we decide to make anything in the world, whatever it is, it's like throwing, a ball out ahead, and we have to catch up with it. And that requires change. We need to change ourselves, because the person who can do the thing that we want is a different person to the person we are now. And that's the whole point, I think. That's the whole point of conscious creation, is to know what we want and move towards it. And that, as I said, it's always a challenge, and the things that come up for us in that challenge are the things we're supposed to be doing with this life of ours. And there's a much wider resonance for this, particularly at the moment, the way the world is right now. The world really needs us to show up creatively. Because I think, and this is one of the reasons for the lunar planning and the focus on the moon and the darker side of this, the dark moon, the new moon, the shadow side. I've been doing some work on shadow, and I'll talk about it again in a podcast soon, the Jungian concept of the shadow. My husband, out of the blue, bought me a workbook at Christmas, Shadow Work for Hot Messes. Don't know what he's trying to tell me here. But it's actually a really good workbook, and it's, again, bringing up all sorts of things around this, and has partly influenced this decision to go for lunar cycle planning. And one of the things about the shadow side, all the things that we don't want to explore necessarily and look at in our lives, they're very this is where the creative spark is sparked. And a lot of what we want to make and do in the world is born out of that place. But also there's a whole repression of the darker side of life, dark in the sense of invisible, all the invisible work that goes on, that is done by people who are unseen in the culture, while on the outside, in the visible part, so much damage is being wreaked by people who are afraid of their own dark side, so afraid of it that they never look at it. And so all of these concepts, one of the posts that I put on Substack recently was a good, happy Nullag Naman, good wishes for the Irish festival called Nullag Naman, and this is on the 6th of January every year. Little Christmas, Women's Christmas, Nullag Naman, that's what it means in Irish, Women's Christmas. And this was a day in Ireland when women were allowed, in inverted commas, to take the day off, having done all the physical and emotional labour of Christmas. They were allowed a day off to do nothing and be with each other. And it's lovely. It was quite a, it was born of a very gendered society, but it's now being reclaimed by women as a cultural celebration and a celebration of female company and female connection, and all that darker side of invisible work, unpaid work, low paid work, women's work, done not necessarily by women, can also be done by men. And, I wanted to celebrate that and use my Nullag Naman this year to actually acknowledge all the people who keep the world working but are not seen, all that invisible work. And that's part of lunar planning too, beginning in the dark moon, which is the new moon. In the darkness is the opportunity. So they're just some of the ideas that are swilling around for me. I hope you find them in some way interesting and in some way useful. I will revisit in our creative salon full moon time, which is also St. Bridget's Day this year, the 1st of February. I'll be setting a schedule for that, and I have quite a worked out plan for that. It's one of my intentions to make the salon something very special and different, and we'll have a consideration of the planning aspects, which we talk about here, but we'll also be looking deeply at process. I'll be offering the practice of free writing. There'll be a little poetry and an opportunity for us to really connect and talk to each other. There'll be an exercise based around the text chat. And I hope it'll be something different and something useful in your creative lives and indeed in my own. So I hope you'll join me for that. I hope some of the ideas that I've been sort of swirling around here about lunar planning and the moon and the dark side have some resonance for you. Love to hear your thoughts, as always. And until I see you again next time, don't forget to go creative. Bye-bye now.